Hi everyone, welcome to Potluck Food Talks. Today we're going to talk about sauces and the sauce maker, the Saucier.
Yeah, what's the deal? Why is like ever since I started cooking, this like term Saucier has had this like very mythical sort of like feel to it. Why do you think that is?
I have a lot of theories. Usually in many places the Saucier is also the guy that also does it in smaller kitchens where you have to merge rolls. The Saucier also does fish and meats and sauces, which is kind of like pretty much the coolest things in the kitchen, no? Somehow, or like the highlights in a menu.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, but also I think it has a lot to do with some chauvinistic macho thing that you're the one on the grill and the sauces and something like that. That is also on the hotline, because on the opposite side, I think the garde-manger, which is the people who usually takes care of also the dressings and salads and colds and terrines and all of that. I think technically it's brother. You see more different techniques. You also have to do with meats. You also like do a lot of things. But it's not as sexy as the Saucier, you know?
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know why that is. Because like I feel the same, but I don't want to feel the same. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to admit that to myself. That I just find the Saucier much cooler than a vegetable. Because like, you know, you're talking about vegetable cooking, you know, there's, especially nowadays, there's just as much like feeling and fine tuning and stuff involved. You know, I mean, you look at like Alain Passat or like Michel Bras and stuff like that. You know, it's like, it's not just an afterthought anymore, you know, but still there's something about even now to this day where when I make a sauce and I make a really good sauce, you know, sauces for me are magical, honestly, you know, I even thought that as a kid, when I would see my grandma cooking, she would make sauces and they were like unbelievably delicious. And I always thought like how it was like this really magical skill to me, just making this liquid with like a certain consistency and a certain like flavor. That's just like amazing. And the sauce I still believe that a sauce really makes a dish.
For sure.
Not always, of course, but like a lot of the times the sauce can make or break it.
Yeah, I think how could I put it? Like the piece of meat is a skeleton, and then the sauce gives it the whole body and nails and hair and character and the whole whatever to make it like a whole body, you know? Like,
yeah, I think that also, it comes from my cultural background also, like being German and like eating like a Christmas dinner. And then like at the end, you've eaten the duck, you've eaten the cabbage, and then you just want to have like one more plate and you just take dumplings and just loads of sauce, you know?
Yeah,
and you just like
exactly.
mop up the sauce, and that's like the last thing you eat.
Yeah, or having these jars, you know, these little Saucier jars where you can just put more sauce and way more than you need, you know, like.
Love those, man. If I had a restaurant, I would put those on the table, you know, just like a sauce jar.
Yeah, man.
But you know, that being said, making sauce is difficult. Making good sauce is difficult, and especially if you don't use any cheap tricks, you know.
I think that's also part of the reason why the Saucier is one of the most respected, because the most respected roles is because it has to be one of the roles with most experience, as opposed to, let's say, other areas like pastry or even garde-manger I mentioned, where you can stick to precise recipes, for example, to make a dressing. The Saucier, there are too many variables that you have to have criteria to know what's going on, and also to make adjustments according to your knowledge, and also the process of bringing a sauce to point to get it to the right amount of saltiness and aromas and everything, like finishing a sauce, you know, saying, okay, now it's done. Now this can be served. That requires a lot of experience.
Yeah, true. And there's a lot of like intuition, you know, like often, you know, people that I work with, they ask me sort of like, but you know, what's the recipe, you know? And as you know, there are a lot of recipes for a lot of things. And of course you can have a recipe for a sauce, which to me is just like a broad guideline though.
Exactly.
You know? Because
guidelines. Yes.
Yeah. Because everything else is just like healing and blah and stuff. I had somebody ask me the other day as I was reducing down a jus. For people who don't know what a jus is, it's like a very concentrated meat sauce that's basically just reduced, made from roasted meat and vegetables if you want, and like sometimes spices depending how you make it, but mainly it's meat and bones. And you reduce it so much until it's sticky and tasty and glazy. And I was tasting it while I was reducing. And somebody asked me, but like, this obviously needs to reduce for like another 8 hours. So why are you tasting it, And I was like, I want to see how it's developing,
Of course.
If I can tell now if it's too sweet. Did I add too many vegetables? Did I add too many carrots and too many onions, Then I can counteract that now. I can add some tomato, I can add some this, some that, blah. Or something like that. And this practice I've been doing, like I've even started doing this when I was in my apprenticeship at Margot, for example. I would taste the broths while they were reducing. And I got the same question back then. And I was like, no, I want to see how it's progressing,
I remember seeing that. I remember seeing a video of Eric Ripert doing exactly that and explaining exactly that. That the moment you start, like while it's still super liquid, because you want to have a reference. The next time you do it, you want to remember that flavor. I mean, it's not to enjoy it. It's just to know at what point it is. Exactly. As you said, how is it evolving?
Yeah.
And then talking about Eric Ripert, like his chef de cuisine is a guy called Eric Gestel. This is also like a legendary saucier. I saw a documentary about him making sauces, and he has like this sauce station, with 30 different sauces. And can you imagine like doing sauces for Le Bernardin, where everything has to be so on point and so detailed, like a 3-star restaurant? Like, I guess that's also the point. Like, it's a big deal, like in a high-end restaurant, the sauce aspect of the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. You have to send me that documentary, by the way. I need to watch that. Anything that's to do with this, like old school cooking. I love that stuff. But yeah, no, absolutely. But then again, but then on the other side, obviously there's the sauces and stocks also. We can't forget about stocks, the base stocks you make, fumé, fond blanc, brown stock, whatever. Vegetable stocks,
Yeah, before you go on with that, because I think this is really important, could you like describe like a normal routine day of a saucier? Because it's actually, there's a lot of stock cooking in a saucier's routine.
So, how it was for me when I was working in a saucier. Now the kitchen I work in is so small that we don't have a saucier. Everybody just does everything. But for me, would get in, and the first thing you do is you start the bases that you need. So if you need to make bisque, right, and you need to make jus, and you need to make, I don't know, bourrite. So you get all your vegetables ready, and first of all, you make your mirepoix, right, your vegetable base, and you just like smash that down, get it divided. You get your pots ready, heating up. When I was like on high times in the saucier, we'd have these big copper pots. And so you get them like to a certain temperature, not high because you don't want them boiling hot, but they need some time to really absorb the heat so that they hold it. So you get it to like a nice medium temperature. And then you start all your bases. You start sweating off all your stuff. Depends what you're doing, obviously. If you're making like a brown, like a sauce or like a roasty thing, you need to start roasting off your vegetables. If you make a clear stock or like a clear base or something, you get that going, but you get it going as fast as possible. And then obviously it depends on sort of like what produce you have coming in, because if you do saucier, you need to prepare all the protein also. The fish, what fish balls do you have in the seafood? Do you have lobster claws? Do you have langoustines? Do you have this? Do you have that? So you have to have a constant rotation of your production. Am I getting a load of fish in today? Okay, do I need to make fumé? Fumé is a clear fish stock, right? So you get that going. Am I getting chickens in, or like, do I need to make fond blanc, which is a clear chicken stock for like a base of something else? And you need to have this constant production rolling. And then, of course, like once that's going, because those things take the longest time and they work themselves. Once they got going, they work themselves while you do other things. So once they kind of start going, you need to, like, you go on to cleaning the fish, cleaning the seafood, cutting the meat, portioning, etc. And then, of course, you need to tend to your stocks and sauces, right? So like a stock or a sauce, it needs constant care and attention. You need to degrass it, so like all the impurities that get caught in the sort of like the protein that coagulates while cooking rises to the surface. And you need to take that off. You need to skim the fat off because the fat adds bitterness and impurities to your stock. So you need to constantly take care of it.
Yeah, because also any little mistake becomes like exponential and three-dimensional. Like if you burn the vegetables too much at the beginning, you will have that at the end sauce or all these notes of whatever mistake you do at some point in the roadmap.
Yeah, for sure. If you roast you roast duck bones, right? Duck bones have a lot of fat, like duck carcasses rather. And you don't strain off the fat well enough, or you roast them a little bit too much. You start your stock. It doesn't matter what you do. It's going to be bitter and it's going to taste horrible.
Yeah, I hate, like, I've seen like these chefs that don't care about these things. It's like, oh no, like I don't take the fat out because so I will have more sauce and it's more cost efficient. And it's like, okay, you're just not understanding at all what you're doing,
Yeah. So if you think about the quantity of your sauce rather than the quality of your sauce, then you've lost already, because it is a very frustrating process to look in the restaurant, in my restaurant, I'll start like a 20 liter pot of broth, right? So like I make it a little bit, I have to make it time efficient. So usually you make a brown stock and then you make another base of bones and vegetables. You put a brown stock on top of that. And then you reduce that down. I don't have time or space for that, unfortunately. So what I do is I make a very nice base of like roasted bones. And I've started doing jus just with bones and onions. That's it. No vegetables, no mirepoix, no onions.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like you don't need that.
Yeah. I roast them really nicely. And then I put them like Tetris-like in a pot so that they're as close together as possible. I make some brulee onions, which is onions just cut in half with the skin on a pan, dry until they're black on the surface.
This one have to be really burnt. Yeah.
Really burnt. Yeah. It's a little bit counterintuitive. You think it'll taste burnt, but it won't if you do it right. It's totally fine. And then I add water just so it covers the bones. I want it to be as tightly packed as possible. And then I let it go overnight at like 80 degrees. I have an induction that I can put on 80 degrees. So it's not even simmering. It's just like lightly moving, and it infuses all night. Then the next day, I bring it to a boil. I bring all the impurities up. I take them off. And then I strain it and I reduce it. And out of this 20 liter pot of sauce, I'll maybe get 1 to 2 liters of sauce,
Yeah.
If I'm lucky. And it's very frustrating to have this pot that's as big as my torso to then have a saucepan that's like, there's nothing in it. And you taste it and you're like, it can still reduce some more. And you're like, but if I reduce it some more, it's all going to be gone. But if you want a nice sauce, that's what you have to do.
What about thickening? I think that's also like a super important aspect. The most purest way in most cases is, as you said, just to reduce it until you have the desired sticky, collagenous texture. But I mean, that does not apply for all sauces. Like, for instance, a wok sauce, perhaps you're going to use cornstarch, or some specific sauces you will use yuzu starch, or some specific sauces you will thicken them. If you're just home cooking, you might just blend the cooking juices with the vegetables to get like a thick cream. And
oh yeah,
there are like all kinds of ways. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think the nicest way, the most purest way is to have just carefully reduce your stock. But then again, it depends on your understanding of what you're making. Your stock needs to have enough collagen, and it needs to have enough, sugar, as in like roasted Maillard reaction, particles, like brown particles. Otherwise you reduce it and it won't get thickened. I'm a big fan of adding, like very collagenous things to stocks. Like, for example, if I make a chicken stock, or especially if I make a brown chicken stock, I put the feet in, something that like people would have frowned upon, but like, I taking inspiration also from Asian cooking, I put the feet in. It's super nice.
Yeah. I learned from our friend, John Basterrechea. He had like this industrial gelatin that it looked like brown sugar. This gelatin you don't see like in stores. and he would use that as a sauce thickener. And I mean, your lips would stick to each other like every time you would eat one of his sauces.
That's very nice. I think like I don't have a problem with thickening, but like the purest and the like highest art is like to make it without thickening.
Of course.
There's a really good trick from amazing chef Fergus Henderson from St. John. They have this thing that they use in their kitchen as a basic cooking tool for different things, for sauces, for pie mixes, for everything. They call it trotter gear. So it's made from pig's trotters.
Yeah,
and I think they like cook pig's trotters down and then sort of like shred it and like whatnot and blah. And I've had it in like many forms, for example, like in pie fillings and stuff, like a venison and trotter pie is amazing, but you get the stickiness and this. And I think so sort of like, even if you make a veal stock, for example, if you have veal feet, like that's very good. But even if I have like I want to make a nice veal jus, I'll buy like one trotter. I'll have them cut it in half and I roast it until it's really nice golden brown. It's a delicious flavor and just add it in. And it gives so much stickiness and so much unctuousness, so much body to the sauce. And gives you that really pleasant, like you just described, this feeling of your lips sticking together. Yeah. What I think is also really nice and that nobody does anymore is blood thickening.
Oh, yeah.
Where you have like a pigeon sauce. One of the most delicious sauces that I can remember, I ate here in Berlin at an event where Christian Lohse was cooking and my good friend Norbert Krüger was cooking the dish. It's like one of his classic dishes. Like it was like a charcoal grilled pigeon with sauce rouennaise, like the Rouen, and like a flour sugar. But that sauce was absolutely delicious. And it was a pigeon jus that's thickened with a blended mixture of the heart and the liver and blood. And so it's like very tricky because you want to thicken it and strain it. You can't cook the blood too much, otherwise it coagulates and it gets nasty. And then they added like a mélange noir, like a mixture of like dark pepper. And it was so extremely flavorsome and like pleasant and nice and complex. One of the best sauces I've ever tried.
That's it for this week's episode of Potluck Food Talks. If you like what we're doing, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok as Potluck Food Talks. The show airs every Monday.